Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and it is the last episode in February. We're full steam ahead to March, and we are just like less than 60, maybe about 60 days away from the NFL draft.
Yeah, this is when the start of the season or the time of the year my head starts to spin. Very busy weekend. I was at 4 New York sporting events this weekend. Saw my Lightning twice, saw the Knicks twice. Just got back from the Garden. Nail biter, me and Nicky Snacks were there. I saw the New York Revival guys there at halftime. A lot of fun. So I'm still just trying to decompress after that. But nothing brings you back down to earth other than talking about the state of the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, we had some fun this weekend. You and I actually caught a game together. We were Devils Lightning for a little bit on a Sunday afternoon. It was a nice, easy game to go to.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
a lot of fun. Oh, yeah. It's like we're at that point of the season where, it's the winter up here. It sucks to do anything outside. You want to do something inside. And, there's a lot of these teams have matinees on weekends, and it's great. It's a great atmosphere. It's good to get families and kids into games because that's the next generation of fans. And the most important thing, Grump, is that the Lightning beat the Devils. And that was, for 2 important points in the race for the wild card right now. So take that.
Yeah, that was a big game that they needed. Devils have been this year's been just awful for them. They didn't retool properly in the offseason, and injuries this year have really doomed them. I didn't realize that we were at the game with Frank the Tank of Barstool fame.
I saw that.
Yeah, I didn't know that when he apparently got temporarily kicked out, and then I guess just told to calm down and sit back down.
Yeah, I saw the tweet, and if I would have known he would have been in the building, I would have bet even heavier on the Lightning to win because there's nothing quite like having a mush. But it was interesting, Grump. We were, I was at 3 of the 4 New York arenas this weekend, and I was actually at Barclays 2 weeks ago when the Warriors played the Nets, and it's interesting to see how different all 3 are as far as atmosphere and it's cool to have, like, you don't have just cookie cutter places here. They all have their unique kind of feel and style to them. So I know you've been to a lot of the buildings. Like, want to compare them real quick or?
Yeah, I mean, you've been everywhere, so I'm more interested in your takes. I'm pretty easygoing. I can usually point out if some places, like, I don't have a complex grading system. I really just want places to be efficient, have some kind of culture, and that's pretty much it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's efficient and has culture, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. If it's missing one, it's 5. It's missing both, it's MetLife, right?
Yeah, I mean, the worst building, I think, of everything in the New York area is MetLife. We've complained about it all the time, how there's a complete lack of excitement or energy or atmosphere there. It's cramped. There's no roof. It just sucks.
It kind of looks like if the Challenger shuttle just kept going sideways and landed in New York, and then they just put fans inside of it. It has nothing to other than it just looks like shuttle wreckage. It's steel. That's it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. The baseball stadiums, really quickly, I think Citi Field is 10 times better than Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium is just an Epcot version of the real one that was torn down. Again, very little atmosphere. They try desperately hard to recreate a time in history when the Yankees were relevant and won championships. Citi Field feels like a park. It feels like a place I want to go on a Saturday afternoon, even if I'm not a Mets fan. I just want to sit out and watch baseball.
Been to both. Like Citi Field more as well. Also, better food.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes to the the New York area is very fortunate. We have 4 arenas in this area, which is great for the fan if you want to catch a tour or a concert or the winter sports in multiple locations. You don't have to overpay just to have the Knicks or the Rangers. You have other options too. So to me, for atmosphere, there's nothing like the Garden. It's that place. It feels different than any other place. The crowd is the smartest crowd in the NBA. It's the best. I think the Rock is the second best for atmosphere of places, to be very honest. There's like a black and red tint to that building, so it feels like you're at a Devils game. A lot of arenas you go to, it just feels like a cookie cutter place. They had their chance and stuff. It felt like it feels like a building that's been lived in for a while. Barclays, other than the fact that has like they play, Jay-Z and Biggie Smalls and Brooklyn and New York City based music, it really has very little atmosphere for basketball. And UBS is pretty much no atmosphere. That is a building that needs to be moved into and breathe more, I think. So, but as far as like a building that's comfortable, I mean, the Garden is the worst. It is, we Snacks and I are trying to get out of the building. It takes us 20 minutes to get down the escalators. It's just so cramped. The newer ones like the Rock and UBS are much, much, much nicer for that. Prices are, UBS is outrageously expensive. Prudential was nice, not too terrible in cost. The Garden's always going to be expensive because the Dolans are a bunch of fuckers. Accessibility, just overall, I to me, we can say about all these things. At the end of the day, there's nothing like Madison Square Garden, and for all of the deficiencies it has, it's still the best. And if I have to pick one sporting location I have to go to in the city for one event, it would be a Knicks game at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, but you have a different opinion for concerts, though, right?
Yeah, I think the Garden sounds fantastic for concerts. I don't know if it's just the way the roof is built or that, they put a lot of money into sound. And I know the Dolans, they care a lot about entertainment, not just the sports that are in there. They spent what, $1 billion on the Sphere in Vegas. So concerts sound great at the Garden. Prudential, I saw Radiohead there about 10 years ago. It sounded like the typical tinny sound in an arena. I've not seen a concert at Barclays. UBS, we saw Springsteen, but we were right on the floor. So, that's not really fair to say how well the sound is when you're right there. So, again, the history of the Garden, it's like, oh, this is where, the Stones have played all the time, and Elton John concerts in the past, and Elvis played there, and how many times has Billy Joel been there? 44 billion times. And it just feels like if you're seeing a show at the Garden, it's important.
Yeah, I like the Garden. I think it's easy to get to. I have no issues with the Garden at all. I'm happy with Prudential. The unusual luck of having a properly built building, and it's in a section of Newark that's been revitalized, is not that bad. Pretty nice little area. I think it's easy as hell to get to, for both of us, right? We came from opposite directions. It was like the easiest commute of all time.
It's easy if you're driving there, and it's easy if you're taking more easier, I think, to take the train from anywhere in Jersey or from the city. You could,
right.
Jersey Transit, not even 20 minutes. You can take a path right to Midtown. They've done
like
a pretty good job.
2-block walk from Newark Penn. So
yeah. And it was packed Sunday. I think
it was a sold-out show. Yeah.
There's a thing about the Devils don't draw or the Islanders don't, but both of those games this weekend were packed. I mean, obviously the Knicks games were packed both nights. So overall, it was just a fun, kind of exhausting weekend when there's as we're getting ready to start really talking about the draft for the Giants and everything. It's good to have these other diversions of our basketball and hockey teams really starting to get into playoff pushes on their own. So I mean, the little sleep I do have will be even less as I kind of keep up with all my teams.
Yeah. So we do have a hefty one to get into, and I'm going to try and keep this one not nearly as long as the last episode, but that's okay because we kind of know what we're doing now. You guys know what we're doing. We're heading into the offseason assessment. This time we're going to take on the big chunk, the big kahuna, the offensive line, and this is going to be a little bit more volume, less talk, I think, right?
Yeah.
More volume, I guess, less discussion. So I think we're going to probably agree on a lot of the players that we have to chomp through here. But before we do, I'm going to crack open this here Czech Pilsner from, where the hell is this from? Is this Twin Elephant? It is Twin Elephant. That's right. Same as last time. Huh. Twin Elephant, local New Jersey brewery, small business, does a great job. Said they're getting a shout out for free on the show. Just like us, small business could use a shout out. So if you are listening right now and you know some friends that are Giants fans, tell them all about Just Giants. And of course, like and subscribe.
Yeah. And again, the way we're doing this exercise with the roster is we are breaking down everybody that was on the roster at the end of last season into 3 categories. Guys we're going to build around, guys that are good enough for now and guys we need to move on from. And the criteria is a combination of several things. It's obviously are you still a good player or not? Is your contract worth it to keep? How old are you? Do we have excess or a lacking at that particular position? So it's a lot of factors into each one. But to make our life easier, we're going to put them into these 3 buckets. And then from there, we'll kind of gauge at the end of this exercise, where are we as a team? Are we really in a rebuild? Like we are excusing ourselves? Is it really legitimate? Or are we just, a lot closer than we think? So, we started with the quarterbacks last week. And we'll keep a running tally of where we are with each player. We'll put that up on the socials after this is over. But today we talk about probably the most important, I think the most important position group on this team to rebuild, and it's the offensive line, because nothing else works without a decent offensive line.
I mean, Giants fans got to know it by now, right? I mean,
yeah,
we've been seeing it, and we've been complaining about it. I think I've been screaming about it since 2012. We're going to go through everybody that's on the offensive line at the end of last year. So they are broken up into 2 chunks. It's guys who are still under contract and guys whose contract has expired at the end of the 2023 season. So I guess it makes sense to start with the guys who are currently under contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that we want them to stay and decide what they are, right? So let's start with the most easy one, in my opinion, and that's Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is signed through 2029. He does have a debt out in 2027 should something happen, or, he has had quite a lengthy injury history. That is the kind of thing that if it piles up over the next couple of years, I could see that being a reason for a debt out. But I think we're both going to agree right here. This is a foundational piece to build a team around, right?
I mean, if we were doing this in pencils and pen, I don't think there'd be one in darker pen than build around for Andrew Thomas. And you did allude to the question I was going to have for you is, how concerned are you with his, injury history and going forward? Because, I don't believe he's played a 17-game season yet, has he?
I'm not sure, but if he has, it's like one time. But am I concerned? I'm not.
Okay.
Look, this could be a whole separate discussion, and I'm not going to let it go there. But I'm just going to throw this out there. The NFLPA is exploring their reworking the offseason deal and how much work they can do, according to what's Florio's thing, Pro Football Talk?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, the hamstring injury for Andrew Thomas week 1, 10 plays into the season, probably somewhat conditioning related, right? In your opinion?
I don't know.
No, I mean, clearly, I'm not there. I'm not his doctor. I'm not a sports doctor. I'm not any doctor. But a hamstring injury chasing down, essentially just running the length of a football field. If a guy can't run the length of a football field without pulling a hamstring, it tells me he's not properly conditioned.
Or he might not be properly warmed up, or may not be properly. And again,
sure.
you were at that game. I was not at that game. The weather conditions were not ideal as well.
That's true. Yeah. But nevertheless, they're professional athletes, man. I don't know. I have a very strong opinion about the NFLPA's CBA agreement regarding the off-season practices, and the amount of practice that they're allowed to have is very, very much reminds me of that fucking what's that scene from Major League? Where he's like he whips out his contract and it says he doesn't have to do any calisthenics that he doesn't deem necessary.
And then the coach just takes a leak on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. But to keep this on Andrew Thomas, I'm not super duper concerned. It hasn't been major injuries like ACLs or I mean, it kind of almost was this year, but
that was just kind of a fluky thing. I mean, that was an injury where he's
doing
something. He's doing something that he's not normally doing. And I get it. Getting conditioned and getting in shape, but asking an offensive lineman when you're not really expecting it to all of a sudden run 70 yards or something is kind of a little unusual for someone, especially of those size. That was a fluke thing that, knowing us, fluke things happen and happen for the wrong. We were in the wrong end of the result of a fluky thing, but it's just again. I'm going to just keep my eyes open for his injury things going forward. It's not going to make, at this point, I'm nowhere near like, well, I don't know if I want to re-sign him or I want to cut him because he's just always hurt. That's not the case at all, but something
Right.
just to kind of file for later, I think.
Yeah, and like I said, having the debt out in 2027, I think, is really helpful. I know that's what is that, like 3 years away, 4 seasons away, 3 seasons away, something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
It's still something. It's worked into a very. That's a great contract. That extension.
Oh, of course. And you know something, if it's because of injuries, I'd rather it be an issue because of injuries than, wow, we have a Kenny Golladay at left tackle who's just, we're signed for 3 years and it's just, we're counting the seconds before we can get out of it. That's going to be, 99% the reason we have to use that out is because, unfortunately, he's physically unable to play.
And make no mistake about it, having a left tackle that's a foundational piece is like, that's strike one,
Yeah.
Let's move on to another one that I think is going to be pretty easy. John Michael Schmitz, signed until 2026. I don't know if we're going to agree on this. I think we are. I'm going to call him good for now. With the hope that he is a foundational piece. I don't think that the play that we saw last year screams foundational piece to me. And I think that he can become that. I think we probably had a bad O-line coach. I think we had a bad year last year. But in general, I can't in good conscience look at what happened and be like, we must build around this. I think you have to, because that's that's sort of what you draft him for, right? It's not after 1 year, but
you draft, you don't draft for 1 year, you draft for a future. And to me, I have him as a build around because, it was his rookie year. An offensive line as a whole was not very good either. But I think the biggest thing is changing up the offensive line coach. I think,
sure.
We had a lot of complaints about it. We're going to talk about another lineman in a couple of, slots a little bit where I think that's may make a huge difference also. But I think if we all complained about the offensive line coach, we've replaced that guy. I think it almost wipes the slate clean for a rookie or a second year guy to kind of, where we have. And we were all like, if you remember before the draft last year, we're like, well, he might be a first round pick. We may want to consider him. And when he fell down, we were jumping around like maniacs that we were able to get him. So if this was his third year or his fourth year, I probably would say good enough. But I think because there's so much ahead of him, that is in the good enough. That is in the build around for me.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to end up with him. I had high hopes for him to begin with. I
still do.
Yeah, no, and I do as well. I think that you operate as if he is a foundational piece for now.
Mm-hmm. And remember something too, we had a rookie center playing, and how many quarterbacks did he play with this year? 3?
That's true. And yeah, I don't think that the musical chairs offensive line is any good for a center either. Like trying, I don't know.
And we also had 2 guys calling plays this year too. Sometimes
the whole year was a mess.
The whole thing was just a complete mess. So you're throwing. We always say it's unfair what happened to Daniel Jones, how we put him in the terrible position to succeed. We haven't done this guy any favors either, anybody in this offense.
Yeah, nobody.
Yeah.
All right, let's flip this over to Evan Neal. His contract expires in 2025. I think this is the pick that actually influenced my John Michael Schmitz pick. This is a good for now. When he was drafted, he was a foundational piece. You hope for that. 2 years not showing anything that's promising. There's a chance that he moves inside, and that might revitalize the way I look at him, right? I mean, if he moves inside and he's lights out inside, then we're talking a different story. But I don't know what his fate is even this year. I just know that he is not a talentless hack. He isn't. And we've got him under contract. So that just by default, I think that makes him good for now.
I have him as good enough as well. I like to keep things simple. He was the best offensive lineman coming out of the best conference in college football and on arguably the best team in that best conference. There's something there. And again, I think in this world we live in now where we want instant gratification, instant success, we're looking at, offensive line, which is one of the hardest positions to kind of, play from day one and be really good at. Some guys take a little longer than others, and I'll put that in the same thing we talked about with JMS, new offensive line coach. We have two guys that we think have underachieved, who had a lot of talent and a lot of success in college. Let's see with a new coach what happens. Let's see if technique improves. Because again, like you said, he's got talent. He has the size. He doesn't appear to be a guy who's a head case or a baby or a whiner. I mean, he doesn't come off to me like Eric Flowers did by any stretch. I'm not ready to give up on him at all. And I think that one of three things will happen. One, better coaching and extra year of experience and a year of maturity. He becomes a decent right tackle. Or, like to your point, we bump him inside and we get that diamond in the rough, and he's much better and he becomes a useful piece. So way too early for me to throw him out into the streets. He's good enough for me for now.
Gun to your head, February 26th. Cranky. Is Evan Neal playing inside in 2024, or is he playing outside in 2024?
He is playing. They are going to do everything they can in the offseason to try to keep him outside, but I think, based on what happens with the draft and free agency, I think he's going to bounce inside.
I think he's going inside. I think that's happening. I don't think they're going to try anything. I think that Schoen and Brian Daboll were humbled very badly this year, and I don't think that they're going to stick to their guns on Evan Neal at tackle. I think that they're going to fix the tackle situation, and if that means he's a backup, then he's a backup. If he's a guard, then he's a guard. That's what I think.
I think, and this is a theme that just keep this in mind as we go through the rest of this exercise and think about the draft and free agency, is that Schoen, Brian Daboll are done with their honeymoon period. And let's pay attention to see how their moves are going forward, that they're no longer long-range plans for a rebuild and, of this, or what they start doing for little short-term gains just to get some wins and get people off their back. So, I don't know whether bringing him inside or not is a short-term success that kind of calms things down but is it good enough for the long-term success of this team or not? Just start watching some moves that they make and kind of look at that with that lens of, are they doing this just to buy some time for themselves, or is this really still part of a plan going forward?
Let's move forward to Mark Lewinsky. Mark Lewinsky is under contract until 2025. He does have a debt out this year that I think saves us $5 million. I have him as a replacement level, and if I could have, I would have made it a replacement level -2. He should have been replaced before he was even signed.
So that means you're calling him move on, right?
Oh, yeah. Get him out of here.
Yeah, I have him as move on as well. Very disappointing. No, let's turn the page.
If I weren't super tired right now, I would go through and find, I think it was after the first game reaction from the first game that he played in, whatever year that was, 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said that he was the one guy on the offensive line that was not allowed to be bad, because that was their one free agent signing. And I was pretty livid about it. I was like, this guy can't play this poorly. That was the one guy that we spent money on in a year we had no money, and he was supposed to be the veteran guy that maybe he wasn't great, but he wasn't going to make mistakes, and he was just making mistakes left and right. And he's been that guy literally since that game. It has not gotten better. It's only, if anything, it got worse.
I think it's gotten worse, actually.
Yeah. So, yeah, Mark Lewinsky, get the hell out of here. Get off my team. Let's move to Josh Ezeudu. Josh Ezeudu, former third-round pick, signed through 2025. I'm going to call him good for now for the life of his contract for this year and next year. I think that bringing versatility to, I think it's like 4 spots on the offensive line coming out of college. He is not somebody that you are making roster decisions about, but the fact that he covers your depth bases on a multiple spots on a team that needs to fill roster holes everywhere, I think that automatically makes him good for now. He's not great. He's not a huge liability either. He clearly has things he needs to get better at. But just his versatility, I think, makes him good for now. He costs basically nothing.
Exactly, and that's one of the big reasons I have him is good enough as well. When I'm looking at this exercise, I'm not thinking of is he good enough to be a starter. I'm looking at guys that the offensive line room you need 9 guys, right? Pretty much.
Everybody has a role, and sometimes that role is the first man off the bench. It's very serious.
Exactly, and that's someone that is good enough is definitely what that fills for. So to me, I have him as good enough as well.
And then last guy that's still under contract, I think, according to my notes anyway, is Marcus McKethan. Same draft class as Josh Ezeudu, same school as Josh Ezeudu, signed through 2025. He's done a whole lot of nothing, but again, cheap as hell. Joe Shane seems to think that he's worth something. He hasn't, there's not a lot of Giants film on him for me to have a super strong opinion, so he's going to fall into the same bucket, more so, falling forwards, you know what I mean, or falling upwards into that good for now bucket. But I don't really have anything negative to say. I don't have anything negative to say about him other than he got a torn ACL in training camp in his first year. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if Andrew Thomas is the darkest of pens for build around, I have Mark McKethan as the lightest of pencil for good enough, good for now. My guess is if we see similar production availability from him this time next year, we're probably saying move on. But for right now, I think he's still young enough, still cheap enough that I think we keep him around. I think he's good for now.
Moving forward to the contracts expiring, guys. I'm going to start with probably the biggest guy here, and that's Ben Bredesen. I think that Ben Bredesen is a guy worth reaching out to retain. And the reasons are the same as Josh Ezeudu, but with better skill, right? This guy can play multiple positions. They've worked him out at left guard, right guard, and center, even though I don't think he actually played any game time at center. So that utility ability to kind of like your utility infielder, your versatile lineman there, his ability to come off the bench and step right into the shoes of any one of those 3 guys is very, very, very valuable. He didn't cost that much to begin with, though I think he was on a rookie contract. I would see if I could secure Ben Bredesen to stay. If you don't want to keep him particularly, I don't know why. I mean, I think he was pretty much average at whatever position they threw him at. They need something that fills exactly those shoes, if not him specifically. So I'm a big Ben Bredesen fan. I think that what he did here was very valuable. I think if you have to have him as a starter for anywhere from 5 to 10 games, you'll survive. You will be a very, very good team if he's the first guy off of your bench to fill in for 1 or 2 games or something like that. That's kind of my opinion on Ben Bredesen.
See, I had him as a guy that if he was still under contract for another year, I would have him in the good for now. I think I'm not sure what his market value is out in the real world, in the open market and stuff. And if I'm going out looking for players, I think I might try to upgrade him. I think so. I have him ultimately as a move on, but again, in the lightest of pencil for that. I think it's just based on the situation. If he was still under contract for another year, I think I would have said, good for now. But I'm also looking at, I'm kind of trying to do individual grades for these guys, and everybody is an aggregate. And as I was going through this, I have a lot of good enoughs, a couple of these, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this offensive line sucked. How could all of these guys? I mean, there needs to be some improvements for it, and I think he was just one guy because he's a free agent. I just felt we could move on and do better than him.
No, I think that's actually a really good point. It's very easy to get locked into keep this guy, or he wasn't the problem, let's keep him. No, this offensive line stunk. But that's sort of where I'm at, right? Ben Bredesen, if he has to be your starter, you're okay, right? But you keep him for, let's just say you re-sign a Ben Bredesen for 3 years. Okay, he's got to play 17 games year 1. But that means you don't have to, you know what I mean, go out and get a actual starter for 1 year, you can put that like you can put left guard on your 2025 wish list instead of your 2024 wish list. You know what I mean? Like you can get by, rewear your underwear for 1 more year, and Calvin Klein's got a new line coming out in a year or something like that. I don't know.
I got you.
I'm not great at coming up with allegories on the fly, but I try.
I'm also not dying on the hill for this one in particular. Again, we're talking about someone that's not really one of our, he's certainly not in the, am I trying to decide between someone I need to build around or is good enough for now? It's just kind of, I feel there's a lot of guys like him that can be got, and maybe a little cheaper and maybe a little younger.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Let's move to one that I think Giants fans are very interested in. That's Justin Pugh. This kind of falls under the same basket for me of like, if you don't want to keep him, that's totally understandable. But somebody's got to fill the shoes that he came in and played as a backup tackle. I have him as needs replacing. He was barely a functioning human being, let alone a functioning football player. and all credit to him for coming off the couch and being not only an immediate influx of life into the offensive line. Make no mistake about it, he really was.
He's an influx of maturity.
Yeah, I was going to say an influx in the locker room. I mean, he had a voice. I think he probably was a good teammate. That said, that's all well and good, and me and Justin Pugh can hang out and get a beer anytime. But when it comes to the 2024 New York Giants, I don't want him on the team. I would like that to be replaced.
That to me that might be in pen as move on. Nice guy. Thanks for doing your service, for coming off the couch, but he just is not very good, and he's not young, and he's not he's not healthy, 100% healthy anymore. To me, you move on.
In that same boat, Matt Parrott, former third-round pick of the Giants, was I mean, at one point, I believe Jim Nagy said that he would be the Giants' left tackle, not Andrew Thomas. That's a little bit of a Senior Bowl homerness. I think that was Jim Nagy that said that. Maybe. Oh, man, I hope I'm not messing that up. I'm almost positive of it, though. That was nonsense. Matt Parrott never became anything because he's too scared to get to his spot and get his hands out fast. That said, like I said before with Justin Pugh, backup tackle is a huge problem for this team. I still got him at need replacing, though. He never developed into what I hoped he would.
Yeah, you move on. I mean, it's a position of such need, for depth reasons and whatever, and I just never felt comfortable with him being in. I always felt like a guy who was just like, how long are you going to be a project? At some point a project has to be completed. And
unless you're my dad.
he's been a project now for 80 something years, hasn't he? I mean, at some point it's like, this is not going to get, guy is never, we're building him. He's a project to be what? To be eventually be a backup?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Move on.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
But staying in the line of backup tackles, let's go to Tyree Phillips. Tyree Phillips was a guy who I thought, was going to stay on this team after training camp last year, got cut at the end, went to Philly, came back a better tackle than when he left, which was a real indictment on Bobby Johnson, and came in and filled some shoes there when Evan Neal got hurt. Tyree Phillips, not super young, but also not expensive. I still have him in the needs replacing spot. I don't know how you got him.
I have him on the very lightest of good enough for now.
Yeah, I think a reasonable person could talk me into it.
Yeah, to me, I think that he's going to be a free agent, but I think you can get him back pretty cheap. And he knows the offense. I'm not feeling like, again, good for now. The key word on good for now is now. And to me, it's just someone, if I can get another year out of him, because, we're going to need to replace a whole bunch of guys. The question is, who's the best of the and he might be the best of that group that we had.
Yeah, Cranky going to squeeze all the breast milk out of that rock.
Just Giants After Dark. Love it.
All right, and then we're going to get into the kind of fodder here, and I hate to be shitty to players, but this is fodder. Let's start with Shane Lemieux because he's homegrown talent, I guess. Backup guard, always got hurt, never really did well when he was on the field. Better run blocker than pass blocker. I have him as needs replacing. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Can we just keep going?
Keep going.
All right, Sean Harlow, another guy that was brought in, I want to say in the middle of training camp to be a backup center. I don't think that he did anything bad or poor, and yet at the same time, I still think that he brings very little. I mean, he could probably be retained for very, very cheap, and they do need a backup center, so I think I could be convinced in a good for now. I don't know what people are watching that are like, yo, yeah, you want him. He's the guy, because I don't know that there's a ton of film out there. I have him as needs replacing.
Kind of using the same thought process like I do for the Hall of Fame, where if I have to think about it, you're not in. If I have to think about it, move on. I have move on.
So then I guess that means that both Wyatt Davis and J.C. Hassenauer both needs replacing?
Move on.
I can tell you straight up, Wyatt Davis was always going to be a disaster in the NFL. That was never going to work. I don't think that kind of guy really works at the NFL anymore. So how do you fix all this? So I've got a graphic up on the screen there, and everybody that's in red is gone, right? And everybody that's in white is still under contract. A lot of holes. That's a lot of holes right there. And some of the guys that we have in white are not guys that we really feel comfortable about staying here. So if you were to shop the free agent market, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about the free agent market here. Would you go? Is there like would you go spear fishing for a white whale or something like that, like a big name, a big contract, a couple of years, maybe 3 to 5 years? I mean, I don't know. What are you fishing for on the free agent seas?
I feel like we have our whale already with Andrew Thomas. I feel like we have our shark with JMS. I think what you do is you need to get bodies. You need to get bodies who are NFL caliber players. And then I think once you have that baseline of at least a functional offensive line, then you can go and say, okay, now how do I improve the baseline from functional to really, really good? I think if you are trying to shoot your load with just getting, the best right tackle in the free agent market, and, he goes down injury in week 2, we're right back where we were before, where I think we're in a position now, based on our analysis of the roster, who we need to move on from and all these different things, that we need bodies. We need a lot of them. We need a couple of starters. We need a whole bunch of guys, who are ready to go, next man up. I don't think we are 1 or 2 moves away from the Super Bowl. I think we are. I think this exercise is going to prove out that we are more in the rebuild than I think we maybe thought we were, maybe after last year. So I would sprinkle that money out along more, get more pieces, get more competition, get more bodies in here. So we're not in a situation where we have to go to somebody's couch and pull them off the couch in week 12 to suit up and play.
I think you could make an argument. So I'm not big on spending big in free agency often. I don't even know that the Giants are in a position to really spend a lot of money. But a lot of Giants fans are big on this idea that at number 6, if the Giants can't or won't go quarterback, I want Malik Neighbors, or I want Brock Bowers, or I want Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Skill position. I mean, like, it is a fair argument. And I say Giants fans, that immediately brings up images of Giants Twitter and dullards and people who look at box scores and that's it. And as soon as the Giants game is over and they've lost, they've already put on their whatever hat for other sports team and they move on just fine. Mm-hmm. But that being said, a reasonable person can say that the skill position group is a position of need and that there is no true wide receiver 1. Darren Waller is hurt all the time, so if you wanted to argue for Brock Bowers, it's a fair argument to say that the skill position group needs help. One way or another, if you're going to address both, it's going to be difficult to do both in the draft. One thing has to happen in free agency. So I tried my best. The offensive line is a big kahuna, right? Like there's multiple parts there. There's a lot that needs to be filled in. You were just saying we need starters and we need depth. We need bodies. So whether that money is spent, they have three options, right? You can spend money on, I guess you have four options. Let's go down them. Four options is you spend money on skill position and you draft offensive line. Option 2, you spend money on offensive line, you draft skill position. Option 3 is you're a magician and you're able to draft everybody really, really well with great value and you don't have to give up much of anything. And option 4 is you don't try and fix everything in 1 year and you just concentrate on what talent is available this year and upgrade what you can upgrade this year and you play the long game. I have no idea what option the Giants are aiming for. So I tried to play it a little safe and I tried to look at if they were to spend big on the free agent market, who's out there that's worth spending money on? I came up with Jonah Williams at right tackle because to me, the biggest issue is if you can secure, and I mean honest to God, be like, I'm comfortable with our tackles, right? I think that you can figure out the middle, especially when you already have JMS. Right? So my thought, Jonah Williams on a 3 to 5 year deal worth $10 to $14 million, I don't think that that's totally unreasonable or undoable for this franchise.
Yeah, I mean, this all comes down to timelines. This all comes down to, one, where does organization see how close they are to really competing? And two, where does the Maras and the Tishes feel the timeline is for this current administration? I think that's a lot of the decision making that's going to be where, and again, this is where I have to start thinking, are they going to start making some of these moves to think about saving jobs as much as they are about, because you said, we worry about this year and then this next year and this the year after, but there may not be a year after. You're coming up on, if we have another season like we did last year, maybe we're not as injury riddle as we were last year, but still, underperforming, not making the playoffs. The noise is going to start getting loud pretty quickly. And I don't know. I don't know, if, ownership is told this front office, told Joe Schoen and told Brian Daboll, look, I have all the confidence in the world with you guys. We have a plan and we are going to stick with it, even if it's another rocky year or 2 rocky years. Implement your plan. Or is it a guys, we need to see some, what did Maris say a couple of years ago? We need to see some significant improvement or something. It was like he gave a warning.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. I don't think that warning should be this year, but that might come next year. And, it all kind of consolidates your thinking. So I hope, I think Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll and this coaching staff deserves, to me, last year was fluky because of the injuries. I really think more than anything. The year before might have been a little bit of luck with schedule and just winning close games and all that. But I personally am showing patience. To me, you keep building as if, and I hope that's what this front office is doing and not thinking about, artificial deadlines or in enhancing that deadline to save their own skins.
The way I'm kind of looking at it is that if I agree with everything you just said there. I don't think that there's significant improvement is needed this year, right? Like I don't think they need to get it right this year or be doomed. But it is time to put the key in the ignition and turn it, right? Like it's time to get the hell out of here, right? So the way I look at it is if that they're trying to, I think that there's a way. Okay, let's just look at financials, right? If you can get a tackle for 3 to 5 years for less than $15 million, you're not getting a number 1 receiver for that money. That's not happening. That is absolutely not happening. You could draft one, though. You can draft one on the rookie pay scale and do this, and you've kind of figured out something for the time being, if they want to go that way. I also kind of looked at interior guys, if they wanted to go maybe Graham Glasgow or Dalton Risner. Those guys are much, much cheaper. You're probably looking at a 2-year, 3-year deal for like $5.5 million to $6 million, something like that, if they want to secure the inside. To me, though, money is better spent on the exterior. So that's kind of where I was looking at. Speaking of the draft, so I just went through 2 straight weeks where I went through the top 16 tackles and the top 16 interior offensive linemen. And there's some mix and match there. There's some guys who played tackle in college that probably won't in the NFL. There's some guys who played both positions, right? And it's hard to project where they're going to go. As far as the first round goes, it's really difficult to figure out what the Giants are going to do. I don't think they're doing anything at 6 that's not quarterback. And I think that if they can't get a quarterback at 6, they're probably either picking a skill position guy that fell for no reason or they're dropping backwards. So I'm going to kind of just talk a little bit about some first-round guys, and I want your opinion on it. There's just 4 guys I'm going to talk about, right? Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. Played center all 4 years. Having listened to him speak personally at the Senior Bowl, he was talked to about playing guard. He said he's open to it, said he can do it. I think that he can do it. That's one option. I think he's going to be the second highest drafted of all these guys in the first round. The highest drafted is going to be Olufashonu from Penn State. He's a left tackle. He's the left tackle in this draft. I think he's out of the question. I don't think there's any chance you even draft him and move him to right tackle. So I would say he's like out of the Giants' question. The other 2 guys that I think are really interesting, though, are Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State. Another guy I saw at the Senior Bowl. I think that he flew up draft boards. I think he's a right tackle that gets picked in the middle of the first round, probably somewhere between 13 and 23. Now, the Giants at 6, that sounds ridiculous, but if the Giants move backwards and suddenly they're picking at 11 or 12, it's not so ridiculous anymore. And then one other guy I'm going to highlight, this guy is currently floating around the internet on mock drafts around the 30 range, which means that he's probably technically accessible at the top of the second round. Remember, the Giants traded up in the second round to get to the first pick in the second round to get Landon Collins when he fell out of the first round for no reason. So I would think that the same kind of logic applies here, and that's Graham Barton from Duke. Here's my case on Graham Barton. He played left tackle at Duke for 3 years, but he also played guard in his life, and he played center in high school. This is a 5-position player. Could you see any of that? Does any of what I just said make sense for the Giants to you?
I guess the only thing, if we're making that decision to get one of these guys, especially someone who looks to be a right tackle, it basically is saying you're making that decision about Evan Neal sooner than later. And
sure, yeah.
With a new offensive line coach, without having the benefit of having OTAs before the draft and really seeing, you could see the tape, but really, getting under the hood to see, he has to move to guard, or I think he's good enough. I think you're kind of limiting yourself a little bit with him because, again, you still have a major investment in Evan Neal. And again, I might be a little more bullish on Evan Neal than most people are. The other thing too is, and this is something you always point out, is you're drafting the player, not the position. And, based on where they're grading, if they're not going to reach to get a tackle if, the best one's off the board and they're still hanging around 6. So it's a question if they want to bounce back in the draft or not for it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like some of these guys here, like the true tackles are Fashanu and Fuaga, right? JPJ is interior only. Jackson Powers Johnson is only going to be a guard or a center, and probably only going to be a center. Graham Barton. So when I did my video, I split them up into 2 groups so I could do 16 of one and 16 of the other. Graham Barton played left tackle at Duke, but everybody told me he's an interior O-line guy at the next level. After I watched him for the interior O-line video, I don't believe that. I think that he could be either. Like, truly and honestly, I think he's got the foot speed to play on the outside and the patience to play on the outside. but he does, he's not excellent out there. I think he really could move to the inside. But I think if you had to move, I think that getting a guy like Grant Barton allows you to be just as flexible with Evan Neal. And the other thing with Evan Neal is, and we're talking about first round, fringe second round guys right now. But regardless, there's no backup tackle. And the backup tackles we did have, we agreed, those were replacement level guys anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So someone's got to be the backup tackle.
Yeah.
So I know first round pick is a little extreme for a backup, but, whatever.
I agree with your assessment that, it's nice having, all the skill position players in the world, but if you don't have time to throw to them or, the ability to block for them, they're really not as worth it as they could be. I just, if any of these guys worthy of a top 6 or even a top 10 pick in your book?
A top 10 pick? Well,
assuming let's say we drop back to somebody we went like from 6 to 8 maybe and got another pick somewhere like who's worthy of a top tier pick of these guys, or these guys you're saying are more like day 2 people.
I would call Fashanu top 10. I'd call JPJ top 15. I'd call Fuaga top 20. And I'd call Graham Barton a day 1 guy. Somewhere on day 1. So in that order. Fashanu first. Fashanu, JPJ, Fuaga, Barton.
See, this is where drafting 6th is annoying. But
see, that's the thing is, remember, we're drafting 6 in the second round. So that's up.
That's also true, too. Yeah. But I mean, like, for it really makes your decision process difficult when you're drafting 6 because you're not going to get one of the elite guys at the position you want. What did we draft Daniel Jones at? Was he 6 also?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so all of a sudden, are you going for a guy that, might potentially be a reach for a position of potential need or not? Or I don't know. To me, it's very simple. This team is going to go. We're going to keep being in quicksand and spinning our wheels until this offensive line is fixed. I just want to make sure that we're getting the right pick at the right value. And
no, I agree. I don't think offensive line is in the first round cards. I think that the most likely is Graham Barton or Talisa Fuaga in the back half of 1 if we wanted to trade up for him, or more likely whichever one starts to fall to round 2.
And the guy from Penn State, he's a true left tackle, correct?
He's the best left tackle in this class.
So let's just take him off the board unless something ridiculous happens where some sort of crazy trade involving Andrew Thomas and multiple first round picks, and who knows, but that's not going to happen. So
I don't think so. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rattle off a list of 6 names, 4 day 2 guys, 2 day 3 guys in my opinion, and I encourage you guys to watch on my other channel, the Football Grump channel, the 2 videos I put on, one on offensive tackles and one on interior offensive linemen, because I go into a lot more detail. Here I'm literally just going to name names, and I think these are guys are more likely targets for the Giants this year, and that will solve problems.
And one thing before you do that too, just because someone's a day 2 guy does not mean you're dumpster diving.
Oh God, no. No.
I think some people think that it's like, well, he's or even as like a 3rd round pick or something. 3rd round picks can do, fill a lot of needs on a team. Just don't look down on that. Well, he's a 3rd round pick. He's a right tackle with a 3rd round pick. That's you gotta keep open minds about that.
Yeah, no. Positional value, all sorts of things go into where these guys get drafted. But I'm just going to prattle off some names here. Day 2, Patrick Paul, tackle from Houston, somebody I'm super impressed with, especially as a guy, what I've read about him, the person. Christian Mahogany, offensive guard from Boston College, another guy I'm interested in. Isaiah Adams, formerly a tackle at Illinois, projects likely to guard. Dominic Puny, same thing, tackle to guard, except at Kansas. Moving to day 3, guys I'm super interested in the Giants checking out. Roger Rosengarten, the right tackle for Washington, which I guess technically makes him Michael Penix's blindside protector.
That's right.
And right guard from Georgia, Tate Ratledge, somebody I did not have on my radar whatsoever, was simply a name on a spreadsheet to me until I did his work. I actually think is a day 3 guy that is worth, considering. It's the end of February, so he could screw up royally at the combine or do something stupid. I don't know, but for right now, for today, Tate Ratledge and Roger Rosengarten are day 3 guys, so like rounds 4 or 5 that I think really could be. You could get a lot of value out of that. And I think the Giants may or may not have been talking to Roger Rosengarten quite a bit at the Senior Bowl. Say that.
All right, interesting.
Kind of saw Carmen Bricello there walking around, giving some pointers to some specific guys and not others.
Oh, there we go.
Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't.
But it could mean everything. Who knows?
Sure. I've got nothing further on this giant chunk of information that we just hammered through.
Yeah, I mean, quarterback's going to get all the oxygen as we get closer to the draft. Will the Giants, draft a quarterback? But the most important position group to me, I don't think it's even close right now, is they got to start finally address. Well, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, the Giants have tried to address the offensive line. They have
That's
drafted.
Correct. I would say
they have to be committed to a full top to bottom build, 1 to 10. Not just we made a pick here, we made a pick here. It's getting guys that will eventually be cohesive together and have the depth where when the ultimate injury happens and someone goes down, we're not all of a sudden talking about the draft next year.
Yeah, I think it's important I think you can categorize all 3 of the last GMs here. Reese and Ross, when it came to the O-line, they did try to address it. It was just too little too late. It had already they had let it totally fall apart and had to rebuild it from scratch. Dave Gettleman was hit or miss with his assessments. Andrew Thomas, absolute win. Matt Parrott, absolute failure. And I would say that Joe Schoen is off to a fairly bad start. His main priorities were Mark Lewinsky in free agency, I would say, and Evan Neal in the draft. Both have not really panned out. And then
Michael Schmitz too.
But again, I'm going to leave that as an NA for right now. Certainly seems like it was a good pick and the correct one. And then Josh Azuda and Marcus McKeithen are like value picks, so they're really nothing. So I mean, the attempts have been there. It's not been totally ignored since I would say
just
the
success rate has been lower than what you want. Yeah.
07 to 17, it was probably ignored. But
that's a generation ago.
It is,
that's
yeah.
no bearing on this team right now with either
Correct.
the personnel or the people that pick that personnel. They're not here anymore.
So with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this one, right?
Yeah, for sure. We will post. Like I said, Grump sent me over who your selections were. We'll post a running total of the roster to this point and whether they're whether they're franchise, or just good enough or get rid of, and we'll keep that so you can check it as well. And if you have any thoughts, put it in the comments or send us a tweet or whatever, and we'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
And if you guys want to like, subscribe, and comment, you can comment directly on this video if you want to. You don't have to send us a tweet on Twitter. You can just hang out with us here on YouTube. Comment, let us know if you think we're crazy.
Well, that's easy.
There's a good to fair chance that I am actually crazy. So you can go ahead and call me out for what exactly you think is the evidence of that. Write down in the comments, or you can send me a tweet too. That works as well. Of course, that would be at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and at Just Giants Pod if you want to do any of that on Twitter. And if you're going to do that, you could at least tell someone about the podcast, right? You could subscribe, you could like, and you could just tell someone like, hey, I told this guy he's an idiot on YouTube. Man. Check it out.
Everybody who listens to this, you go to Giant games, you sit around a bunch of people that you're friends. Let each of them know. Say, hey, man, you got these 2 imbeciles who talk about the Giants. Give them a listen. So we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And we will see you guys next Tuesday morning with our assessment of defensive line, right?
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Juicy. We're going to start flipping to the other side of the ball. We'll see you next time. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.